Good afternoon and welcome to this QUT Virtual Masterclass. My name is Pete Black. I'm the Associate Dean Learning and Teaching for the Faculty of Law here at QUT. And we are coming to you this afternoon from QUT's beautiful campus here in the heart of Brisbane. And so we begin by acknowledging the Turrbal and Yagara people as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands, lands that were never ceded. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. QUT also acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. And welcome once again to this QUT Virtual Masterclass. This series lets you explore your QUT study options on a deeper level, giving you a first-hand experience of how our courses stay relevant to current real-world situations and therefore your future career. And today we are showcasing in this masterclass an exciting new approach to build better legal futures from the Faculty of Law. And so our presenter today is Dr. Rachel Hews. She is the course coordinator for the Graduate Certificate in Future Law Technologies and the unit coordinator for Legal Design Online and Law and Design Thinking subjects. She is passionate about using human-centered design to find creative and innovative ways to build better legal futures. Before I hand over to Rachel for her presentation, I'd like to encourage you to be engaged and interactive in this presentation, both in the activities that Rachel has planned, but also if you have any questions at any particular point, either about design thinking or about studying law at QUT, you can use the Q&A function in this Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar so that you can ask those questions. And we will have time at the end of Rachel's presentation to respond to some of those questions. So by way of introduction, it's a real pleasure for me to introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Rachel Hews.
Thanks very much, Pete, and hello everyone and welcome to our masterclass in law and design thinking. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you here and to share our experiences and our learnings around design thinking here in the QUT Law School. You can see on the screen that we're going to be covering a few different things today. We're going to be starting with a conversation about the future of law and why it is that we need new tools to make sure that we can better address legal problems into the future. We're going to look at how QUT has incorporated design thinking at both the undergraduate and postgraduate level in the law program. We're going to talk about what design thinking actually is. This, of course, is a term that many of you will have heard many times over. Some of you may have very comprehensive understanding about design thinking, but others may not be quite sure exactly what the term or phrase means. We're going to do some activities where we look at empathizing, which is one of the steps of the design thinking methodology, and we'll engage in some activities around that to help you think about empathizing and to consider different layers of understandings or insights that we get into humans, human behavior, and particularly for law in relation to our clients. We're then going to move on to have a think about collaboration and ideation. And by that, we're really thinking about coming up with creative ideas and a range of brainstorming type activities. In the end, we'll also have a chat about the kinds of activities we would build on from where we will leave you today in this masterclass. As Pete and I have both mentioned, there are going to be some interactive activities in today's masterclass. So you can see on your screen, there are two different ways that you can access those interactive activities. There's the QR code there, or also a web link with a code that you can use. So if you have a device handy or another screen, I'd encourage you to log into this site and to partake in the activities throughout the course of this workshop. I'll just give you a moment so that we can have you log in to that particular website. When you do log in, you will find that you will be taken to a screen that is the same as the screen that you are looking at now. So it will take you into the screen that I am currently sharing with you. Once you're into that screen, you will find that as I proceed throughout the different slides, you will follow me through those slides. And when I get to slides where you're able to interact, a prompt will come up, allowing you to then interact with those particular activities. I'll just move on to the next slide. You will see at the top of this slide, we still have that website and the code. So if you still haven't been able to log in, please have a go at doing that. If you find that you can't log in, you're still welcome to watch what we're doing on the screen. And as you can already see, you'll be able to see people interacting with this particular program. I'm incredibly happy to see that people are already going ahead and answering the question of how are you feeling today as an introductory question. Lots of people are interested and happy to be here. Lots of people feeling good. And I'm excited to see that some people are also feeling creative and confident. So thank you very much for answering those questions. I will move on to the next slide, but those who are still logging in, you will be able to still respond to that question and to answer. On the device where you are partaking in these activities, you won't necessarily see the results screen. But if you come back to the Zoom screen where you're watching this webinar, you will be able to see my screen, and there you will see the real-time responses that people are entering in the website as part of the interaction. Okay, we have the majority of people interested and happy to be here. So that is terrific news. So let's move on. So I wanted to talk first about the future of law and why it is that we need a new toolkit. Susskind tells us that the future of law will change more in the next 2 decades than in the past 200 years. And I think we all know that in various aspects of our lives, regardless of whether that's in the legal discipline or beyond, life has rapidly changed in the last decade or so, and it's very clear that those rapid changes are going to continue. Technology and innovation has set an incredibly fast pace, and all of us are really constantly trying to keep up with those changes and to reinvent ourselves and reinvent how we do life, how we do work, and how we best serve the needs of people in this changing society and changing global world. On the right-hand side of this screen, you'll see a small excerpt from a Deloitte's Insights report last year. In that particular report, they were looking at why the future of work is human. And design thinking is all about humans. We really focus on the element of humans in the way we try to solve problems. This report was really interesting because it provided some reflection on where we have come from throughout history and where we are coming to now as we head towards the future. You'll see at the top of that screen, they talk about from hands to head to heart. And they reflect on the fact that some time ago and historically, we were really needing to focus on the manual skills of the hands. That was generally the priority when it came to the workforce. And they were the kinds of skills we really needed to hone as people. From there, we moved more into the skills of the head, cognitive processing of the mind, the kinds of things that came as computers came, and we really needed to be able to maximize our brain function in order to deliver the best outcomes in the workplace and the best innovations that we could. But increasingly, it is becoming clear from reports like this and from other various reports about the future of work and from futurists who are making predictions about where we are heading in terms of work, that it is not the skills of the hands or the head that are so important, but instead it is the skills of the heart. And there they are talking about the human skills, and the human skills that are so important because they are the very skills that are incredibly difficult to automate. It is very difficult to find robots or create robots to do many of these human-based skills. And that is why they are so important as we head into the future of work, and particularly for us, the future of law. You'll see there on the screen there things like interpersonal skills, uniquely human skills around collaboration and caring and creativity. And those are the types of skills that we really focus on in our design thinking programs. As Pete has already mentioned, we offer design thinking in both our undergraduate Bachelor of Laws, our honours program, and that's part of our minor in law, technology and innovation. We also offer design thinking in our graduate certificate in future law technologies. That's a postgraduate program. So law and design thinking in undergrad and legal design online in our postgraduate offerings. It is by incorporating these units into our programs that we are best able to assist our students to develop the mindsets and capabilities they need to ensure that they are well prepared as they move forward into the future of work. So let's move on to our next activity. Before we talk about what design thinking actually is, I'd like you to see if you can enter 3 words that you think of, words that just come to mind when you hear the phrase design thinking. They may relate to the definition of design thinking or aspects of how you might apply design thinking. And as you start to enter these, you will see that they will come up on our screen and create a word cloud so we can see all the different kinds of things that people are entering. So I'll give you a moment, those who are participating, to enter those words, and already I can see some amazing words coming up that are absolutely indicative of design thinking. There's lots of creativity, collaboration, innovation. I can see fun, solution-oriented, mind maps, collaboration. These are fantastic. It's clear to me looking at this mind map that many of you have quite a comprehensive and sophisticated understanding already of what we're doing when we talk about design thinking. Sticky notes, I'm glad that sticky notes got a mention there. Human-centered, people-oriented, people-focused storytelling. These are fantastic. So take a moment yourself to have a look at all of those words that are up there. Even before I start talking about what design thinking is, this is already capturing so much about what the methodology is, and we also think about it as a mindset. Okay, it looks like people are starting to slow down on entering their words there, so I'm going to move on, but I'm really impressed with the words that have come up there. So let's move on with our creativity and innovation. Okay, so what is design thinking? What is this thing that we've been talking about? You can see in front of you a chart that demonstrates the 5 steps of the design thinking methodology. Design thinking is a methodology that we use to solve complex problems. We use it to solve legal problems in our context, but you can also use it to solve any problems whatsoever in any type of work and even in your own personal lives. You can see there that it has 5 steps. We start with empathizing with our client or the people that we are trying to solve a problem for. We want to really understand the depth of what it is that their concerns or their needs are so that we can properly find solutions for them. After we empathize, we move into the define stage. And this sounds easy, but actually it takes quite a lot of effort to draw out our deep understandings from our empathizing phase in order to properly define a problem that we are trying to solve. Often the problem that we really need to solve is a little deeper than what we first think. And so we need to incorporate that depth into the defining of the problem that we're going to solve. From there, we move on to ideation. So this is the creative and fun stage. When we brainstorm, when we put sticky notes on walls or on a computer screen if you're using an online tool. We go big and crazy and divergent in trying to think as many possible ideas as we can in relation to trying to solve the particular problem we're looking at. Once we do that, we draw out from those ideas and decide on one that we're going to prototype. And by prototype, we mean that we are going to create some kind of artifact, some kind of a storyboard, a brochure, a video. It might be a wireframe for a website or an app. And we're going to use that to try to show to our client or to other people who can give us feedback. And the feedback comes in at our testing stage. So this is when we are showing people the particular prototypes that we've made, and we're trying to get their feedback so that we can iterate and improve our prototype and ultimately come out with something that is a really refined, successful, and effective solution. We tend to teach this methodology in a linear way, but in reality, it's really not very linear. It's far more iterative. We tend to come a little backwards and forwards between the steps to make sure that we fully address each aspect of the methodology. As well as being a methodology, design thinking can also be seen as a mindset, and we teach lots about mindsets in design thinking. There's all sorts of aspects of coming with a curious mind, a beginner's mind, and really thinking in some ways like children do about the particular ideas that we might have for solving a problem. We want to try to remove the constraints, think outside the box, as we often say, and that's what we really promote when we're engaging in the design thinking process. So let's talk about empathizing, which, as you saw, is the first step in the design thinking methodology. So as I said, this is where we're trying to reach really deep understandings or deep insights about our client or a client group. A client might be an individual. They might be a collection of people who have a particular problem or series of problems. They might be a whole organisation, like a law firm, or they might even be some kind of not-for-profit or a startup, for example. So we could have various different clients, and we will want to really empathise with them, engage in interviews and any other processes that we can to draw information out of them so that we can deeply understand their needs and wants. We want to also understand why they have those needs and wants, because often it's those deeper insights that will help us as we start to shape solutions. So you can see at the bottom of the screen there on the right-hand side a reference to the 5 whys technique. And you might have heard of this before. It's a little bit like a nagging child asking you questions saying, but why? But why? But why? And it's really that idea that we ask a question and we receive the initial, often broad-based answer. It's often a fairly shallow answer. But when we then ask someone why and ask them to go another layer deep, we start to get a little more insight or understanding into what the client's needs or wants are, or what their feelings are, or what the drivers or motivations are around what they're looking for in terms of outcomes. When we then continue to ask why, and they say we go 5 whys deep, ideally to get to insights, we will find that we are able to better understand different aspects of a person's needs and wants. And these are really critical in the design thinking process. So on this screen, you can see on the left, the concept of the 5 whys, going deep. And I'm going to ask you shortly in our next activity about why you might want to study law, if indeed you do want to study law, but let's say that you do want to study law. And on the right-hand side here, you won't necessarily be able to read everything that's listed there, and that's fine. But what I want you to note is that we have a series of different people across the bottom. And at the top, I have asked the question, why do you want to study law? At the outset, all of these people might have the same type of answer. I want a well-paid full-time job. I want to be able to earn money in some kind of consistent and stable way. But as we start asking why, we get into those deeper levels and we discover that actually people's motivations are incredibly different. And these are the insights that are going to help us as we move forward in the process. So we can see here on the left, we have a person who's looking for that stable income because they want to be able to take care of their family. If we go deeper, we will see that they They were raised in a family that were not very well off. They really struggled with money and they don't want to replicate that for their own family. So they're really driven to try to ensure that they have a really solid income of their own. The second person in the chart is someone who's really motivated to travel, perhaps not at the moment with coronavirus, but someone who, if we look deeper, her best friends are situated all over the world. And it's incredibly important to her to stay connected to those people. And so she wants her good income so she can travel frequently. We have a next person who wants to be able to buy an investment property. They're really conscious that one day when they retire, that they're going to be self-funded and they want to plan now for their future financial security. And if we were to move on through the other people on the chart, we can see that there's someone who's wanting to help a sibling who has some special needs. There's someone who wants to be able to fund a cat rescue clinic that they run. And our final person is someone who has a special hobby where they collect teapots, silver teapots from the 18th century. So these are actually based on real people. And we can see there our layers or our depths of understanding and insight. And hopefully this gives you a sense of what we're talking about when we say that when we're trying to empathize with someone, we're really trying to understand the depths of who they are, what drives them, what motivates them, and what their needs and wants really are. We really want to get into their shoes and understand who they are and how we can support them to get outcomes they want. So let's move into another activity now, and this is your turn. So you should now have on your screen, those of you who are interacting, the question, why do you want to study law? And this is where you can put in your initial response, that kind of high-level idea of why you might like to study law. Keep in mind, nobody can see who anyone is in these responses. Terrific. And as you start to post them, they will pop up on my screen if you would like to have a look at them. Fantastic. We've already got some here. To make a difference, to have a bright future, to become a lawyer and help people. We've got a lot of wanting to make a difference and help people here. To gain a better understanding of myself and the people around me, human rights, living a noble life, wanting to help clients, falsified clients, clear their name, bridging a gap of justice. We've got lots of helping people in improving the system, which I really love because this is quite a strong pull in law. The profession is very prestigious, absolutely. There are aspects of that that is really that is a real incentive for people to want to be lawyers. To be better at business, absolutely. Law is something that is going to help us in any industry. To help regulating the workplace. So there are a range of different things that you have said here, which is terrific. On the next slide, I'm going to get you to think about the whys. So let me flick through and you'll see the why. So I want you to think about the first response that you entered and now say, okay, why? Why was that my answer? And then I want you to keep asking yourself why, as many times as you can really, but certainly a couple of times, and pop your answers in to explain why you provided the response you did on the previous slide. Okay, so here we've got someone wanting to have a better life and better understanding of law. So for those on the first slide, if you wanted to help other people, tell us a little about why. What motivates you to want to help others, or what motivates you to want to be in a prestigious career, or to want to help with regulation, or to want to help with human rights. So we can see we're getting deeper here. We want the world to be fair. It's interesting. Strong business will employ lots of people. So there's opportunities here for employment to make things fairer. It's interesting. We need professions. It's interesting. We've got people talking about what they've witnessed, lots of injustices, and they want to be able to right those. They're wanting to be able to do good. So as you continue to dig down into these, we would find that you will have really quite deep-rooted reasons for why you are driven to do these particular things. And this also applies in our legal context for our clients. So as I said earlier, our client might be an individual, might be a collection of different people with similar issues. There might be a not-for-profit, a startup, a law firm. the more we can dig deeper to understand their problems, their challenges, their needs, the more we're going to be able to define the actual problem we're trying to solve and to work out different ways of solving it. Of course, we've learnt traditional legal ways of solving problems in law, and there's an essential place for that traditional approach. But there's also a growing need for us to be able to apply these more creative and innovative approaches as we try to solve problems in law. So on this next slide, you can see just a recap of what we've been talking about here. We've been talking about these levels or these layers of understanding, that they help us to understand our client deeply and holistically. They help us to discover what really matters to our client. They help us to find opportunities for innovation and for creative problem solving. And ultimately, they help our client to get the outcome that's right for them. And we know that sometimes the right outcome is a legal one, but sometimes it may not be a typical legal outcome that is the best outcome for our client. There are lots of legal and non-legal considerations that we need to take into account as we try to determine the best outcome for our clients. So we can see then that was a little bit of an insight into the empathise phase, and it's a little bit of an insight into how we might get deep and try to understand what's going on for our client. From there, we would typically move into the define stage, and I talked about that earlier. So what we're going to do in the next activity is work on a client scenario that I've already defined for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the client, and then we're going to start ideating and thinking about different solutions that we might be able to come up with to help this client to solve their problem. So let's have a look at this next slide. So here we're going to be collaborating together and we're going to be thinking creatively. We're thinking big, we're thinking divergent. We're going further and further away from the initial problem to try to come up with ideas about how we solve it. So you can see here on our screen, our client is a law firm. Okay, so we said sometimes they're an individual. In this case, our client is actually a law firm. Our law firm is called Creative Law. They are a mid-tier law firm with approximately 50 staff, and they provide legal services to around 700 clients per year. This particular law firm needs a way to continue providing their really high quality services, but to do so at a lower cost, because they don't want to lose their business to competitor firms that are cheaper. They're being undercut by other firms in the market. Now, this is a real problem, isn't it? This is something we see in the legal discipline and legal industry. At the moment, we've been seeing it a lot in recent years, and it's certainly something that we will continue to see into the future. So our next interactive activity is our opportunity to start thinking about how our client might do this. So remember, we're taking off any constraining ideas. We have no constraining hats on. We're thinking outside the box. I want you to start typing in, and you can put multiple answers in this section here. I want you to start typing in examples or ideas. It might just be a few words or even a word, could be a whole sentence, about ideas of things that our client could consider to try to maintain their high quality services, but reduce their costs because there's lots of competition in the market. Terrific. We've already got some examples here. Automation, absolutely. So much automation the automation is absolutely something of the future. Artificial intelligence options, working from home, going online, offering greater services than competitors. Yeah, absolutely. Outsourcing, yes. Online use. So we've got a lot of business approaches here as well, haven't we? Thinking about how as a business, as a legal practice, how do we better manage our resources? Creating a system to automate a client's database and needs. Assigning easy work to outsourced companies. Creating better precedents. These are fantastic. So there's lots and lots of ideas you are already coming up with collaboratively on the board. And those of you who are inputting, again, just a reminder that if you're looking at the screen I'm on, you'll be able to see everyone's answers scrolling on the screen. So when we're going through this ideation process, what we often do is we start like this. We say, right, I want you to think of every idea you possibly can. And often our initial ideas are quite obvious. They're sort of the ones that come first to mind. So that's logical that they would be the first ones we note down. But what we then start doing is trying to offer, we call them constraints, but essentially it's a, what if we did this thing? And we ask you to consider that and to see if you can come up with more ideas. So for example, I want you to consider, what if money was absolutely unlimited for a brief temporary period of time? What then might your client do? And have a think about what you can add into our list on the screen there. The reason we do things like this, even though it's not realistic that money is unlimited for a temporary period of time, is that it promotes creative thinking. And the more we promote creative thinking, the more we are able to springboard off ideas into other ideas. So even if ideas are a little bit crazy, a bit farcical, not feasible, we don't worry about that. We're suspending all of those constraints at the moment, and we are just trying to get through as many ideas as we can and keep springboarding off those. So we've got lots and lots of answers coming up here. We've got people talking about offering bespoke solutions. So again, so have a think about, what more can we do if we have unlimited money? So someone's going to hire all the other lawyers from all the other firms. And that's fantastic. That's out of the box thinking, which is terrific. We're using cutting edge technology. We're going to, I think there's a empathizing there. So close relationships with clients personally. Certainly the more money we have, the more we can empathize and connect with our clients. But now I also want you to think that we have no money to do this. What ideas can you come up with if we have no money? We just have us, we're going to support this law firm. Let's say there's just a few of us here and we're trying to come up with ideas about what the firm can do in-house to make itself more efficient. Okay, so that it continue offering its services, but at a lower cost. So think about that now. We have no money. What can we do? We're suspending company outings. We're using paralegals. Yep, so they're cheaper. Taking more interns. Okay, we might be redesigning offerings, collaborating with other virtual organizations, trying to add more value. So as you continue to come up with these ideas, the next thing we might get you to do is to try to expand on these. So for example, some of you have talked about value adding or working from home, doing a lot more online. Some of you have talked about artificial intelligence or automation. I want you to think about the particular aspects of our law firm experiences. So from when a client first connects with a law firm, so they're onboarding essentially, right through until the end when they finish with our law firm, they've completed their matter and they're moving on. When in that process might we be able to do some of the things you're thinking about? So start now adding in ideas. Which aspects might we be able to automate? Where could we use artificial intelligence? Are there already programs, software, tools that you know of that we can use, that they're off the shelf? And if you've got any of these, pop them down in your answers, because this is how we continue to get more and more answers, more and more ideas. So yeah, we've got all sorts of things coming up here. We've got paying less for office space because of the working from home. We've got changing the way we engage with customers. Care costs very little. Yet we're looking at time there, so it might be about freeing up more time. Celebrity recognition or advertising. This is really out of the box thinking, particularly in social media, for example. Are there ways that we can really explore different types of marketing to acquire clients in a cheaper way? Personalized experience. Buy every client a puppy or a cat. I love that. Creative thinking. Who knows? That one might be a winner. Offering incentives. Free legal advice. We know already that a lot of firms do these kinds of things, and these are fantastic. I think one of the things that's been really interesting about this year with the coronavirus is that while it has been an incredibly difficult year the world over, what we have seen is so many businesses really pivot and really reinvent themselves to become something effective, some kind of business that can really perform and excel in the current climate. And this is the kind of thinking that we're talking about when we talk about design thinking. Improving happiness of lawyers using influencers. So hopefully you can see there that these processes, and we would go on in a class, we would spend quite a long time going through this ideation phase, offering more and more of these conditions or constraints to try to promote even more radical thinking and even more creativity. So let me move on to the next slide to remind you again about where we are at now. So we've moved into that ideation phase, and you've just done a fantastic round of ideation on our screen there. And that was excellent. It's really fantastic to see people just off the cuff being able to think outside the square and to come up with some really creative solutions. So thank you so much for participating and doing that. After we get to that ideation phase, what we then do when we're about to prototype is we start assessing the ideas. And this is when we start having to think about feasibility, desirability, viability. So we want to start going through all the ideas and sifting through them and having to think about, well, which ones are actually desirable? Is it actually desirable that we give every client a cat or a puppy? Is it actually desirable that our lawyers work from home? Is it desirable that we use artificial intelligence software that is already existing? Is it desirable that we create something bespoke for our firm? Would our clients use it? Does it solve their problem? And would they actually engage with it? Would we use it? We want to think about feasibility. Can we actually produce this idea, this thing that we're talking about? Is it something that we have the resources, the people, the tech, the money to do? Can we get access to the things that we need in order to create it? So if one of our ideas was that we're going to go and create a law firm on the moon, then we probably can't do it. But if we're talking about working from home, then absolutely. I'm sure there's a range of different ways that our creative law firm can make that happen and can increase its efficiencies by doing that. And then finally, we want to look at viability. Does it actually make good business sense for our creative law firm to choose these particular ideas? And as we go through these three aspects of assessing our ideas, we will continue to narrow them down until we have perhaps a single idea that we're growing, or perhaps even a compilation of ideas that we're melding together into some kind of really innovative way of trying to address our clients' problems. And we can see on the Venn diagram there on the screen that we're really aiming for that sweet spot right in the middle. That's what we're wanting to choose. That's the idea that we want to go forward with. When we're empathizing with clients right back in the beginning, we sometimes talk about when we get right into the depth of understanding that we might have an aha moment. It's like, aha, that's the thing that's really important. That's the thing where we're going to be able to make a difference. And it can be quite similar in this prototype phase when we're trying to ideate and then choose the ideas. We'll often say, aha, that's the idea that sits right in the middle of our feasibility, our viability, and our desirability. And that's the one we want to move forward with. So once we decide that we're going to move forward with an idea like that, we go to the prototype stage. And I touched on this earlier. At the prototype stage, we are trying to produce something rough and ready. This is a stage where we are producing an artifact that is cheap. It's a mock-up. It's not polished. It's not refined. It's specifically designed for someone to tear it apart and to give us all this feedback so we can make it better. It's definitely not something that we want anyone to be attached to. And as I mentioned earlier, we might create some kind of mock-up of a website or an app or a brochure, or we might storyboard out or flow chart out some kind of legal service provision. So with our particular client, we might create some kind of new organizational structure or look at different aspects of the services they're going to provide and how that might happen. We might look at the onboarding from a client from start to end and look at how our solution is going to solve that problem and map that out. And these can all become prototypes. We can have many prototypes, and what we want to do is take them to our client to get feedback. And this is the testing phase. So we want to be able to go to our clients, so in this case, our creative law firm, and to see what they think. But we would also want to be able to take these prototypes, or certainly the latter prototypes when they're feeling fairly confident about what we're looking at producing, to their clients, because we want to be sure that their clients are going to like using this solution. We want to get feedback from them. I like these parts, but this doesn't work for me, and this is why. And that feedback is just incredibly valuable, because that is what we use to improve every aspect of our prototype and eventually produce something that is refined, that we can put into practice in our legal practice, or that we can help our client to solve their particular problem. So that's really the phase and the methodology of design thinking. And we have done a really quick run through today of a couple of aspects of that, of gaining some insight through empathizing and then taking a defined problem and ideating solutions. We've then talked about how we might choose an idea to prototype and then how we might go about testing that. So as we start to come to the end of the webinar, I have a final question for you, a final interactive activity, and I'm hoping that we're going to have 100% correct on this one. It's a fairly straightforward one to see how many people were listening, and it is, what's the final step in the design thinking methodology? And we are looking pretty good here. I can see that everyone so far who has responded has got the correct answer, almost everyone, and it's okay if you haven't. So the final step is that testing and feedback stage, and that most of you can see on the screen have got that absolutely correct. So when we're teaching design thinking here in QUT Law, we are really all about developing the mindsets for design thinking, and that's around creativity and innovation. We are about teaching the skills involved in applying the methodology or framework. And those skills, it might be teaching them in person or online, depending on the type of course you are doing. We teach both of those different things. We work on real life problems with clients. So we're actually trying to help clients to solve problems. They might be organizations or individuals. There's lots of collaboration with our peers, because design thinking and particularly ideation is absolutely best done collaboratively. We need the energy and the creativity and ideas from other people to help our own creativity to grow and to get the best ideas we possibly can. We also connect with industry, and in particular, we are very focused on helping our students to plan their careers in terms of this rapidly changing future of law, and that includes building connections and professional networks. It is absolutely our priority that our students can leave these units and our courses feeling very well equipped for the future of law in this rapidly changing global world. Thanks so much for interacting with this webinar.
So thank you all very much for your participation and engagement in this QUT virtual masterclass. And I really hope that we will see many of you either in person at QUT Gardens Point one day or online in some of our courses or other activities. So thank you very much and have a good evening.